Hey everyone, welcome back to Aisha Speaks Truth. I hope you guys have all had a great week so far, and I'm super excited to be with you guys today. Just double checking and making sure everything is loading well on my end. It looks like I got a little issue right here with Facebook again with loading. So yeah, guys, welcome in. But today is going to be very interesting because we're going to be talking about Tucker Carlson, who we know is the leading conservative voice, one of the leading conservative voices that we have right now. There's some allegations against him, some things that I've been hearing, and I want to chat with you guys about that. Then we're also going to be hitting on the Israel and Hamas issue, as well as the Russia and Ukraine as well. So let me just make sure everything here is accurate on Facebook, guys. We are streaming to multiple different platforms at a time, which is cool and fun. But sometimes you got these technical issues that happen in the back end that you also got to sort out. So yeah, just bear with me for just 1 second, and then we will get rolling. Okay. Making sure Facebook, I'm almost there, guys. We're making sure Facebook is alive because I know people are waiting on that live stream to pop up there as well. So as soon as that is checked and good, we're good to go. Look like it's loading. Okay. All right. Well, looks like there's a little issue there. But anyways, we're just going to keep moving forward. All right, before we jump into today's episode, I do want to share with you guys what I saw in a recent truth post from Donald Trump. And that was an endorsement for Senator Tim Scott's new book. We can put that asset up. It is One Nation, Always Under God. I thought this one was a really cool grab. This is my first book I've ever gotten from Senator Tim Scott. I thought to pick it up. Number one, I wanted to support him. And number two, I like reading. I want to, see what his book is about. And I love the fact that it says profiles in Christian courage on it. And I remember a few times that I've seen Senator Tim Scott, who is, senator of my state here in South Carolina. He, when he speaks, he is unapologetic about his faith, which I love because I'm a Christian conservative. And so I admire that about him. I understand that when we have Christian politicians, that sometimes is not the same as someone as myself or someone who's been in church, etc. They might, claim to be a Christian and etc. Might not live that out, etc. But I just love that he was unapologetic about it. In his rhetoric, he does seem like he knows what he's talking about. In his prayers, it doesn't seem like it's rehearsed. I really love that. It just seems more authentic, is where I'm getting at. And so the book that he released, this one right here, I just got in yesterday. I want to read to you guys just a little excerpt from it so you understand what it is. If you are interested in checking this one right here out, it is available by Amazon storefront, guys. You can check it out at Aisha Schreiner on Amazon. And then you'll see this book along with many others. Now, this book is a little unique. I know he's a politician, but you can say he's coming from a politician's standpoint. I believe that'll be a part of his DNA for forever. But this book right here speaks on the heroes within our nation who has made different changes in our nation, and they attribute that to their standing on Christian values. And I thought that was super cool to just know those individuals and get to hear their stories and be encouraged in that. I love reading books where personally you get to develop yourself and you get to hear the stories of other people and how they overcame things, real life things very authentically, and how the results of their life as a result of them taking certain stances in their faith and fighting for different things. So this one is really cool. So I'll just read this little portion here. It says, One Nation Always Under God is filled with inspiring stories of American Christians who have moved the nation forward with fearless advocacy. The abolitionist William Lloyd Garrison, the Apollo 13 astronaut Jim Lovell, the fiercely dedicated mental health reformer Dorothy Dix, from an aging World War I ace who stepped up to command soldiers stranded in the Pacific in 1942, to a scientist and believer whose discovery saved 1 billion people from starvation. These men and women exemplify both the American spirit of adventure and the Christian love of serving others. And if you look throughout history, guys, very interesting, you see that a lot of the abolitionist movement have been started by Christians. It's pretty cool, okay? Just to go back through our history and look. It's very encouraging when you see those things take place. So if you want to check this one out, go ahead and grab it. It's available right now on Amazon and it's marked down. Okay, so if you want to check that one out, support Senator Tim Scott. And he was, I guess, awarded a New York Times bestseller, and he's endorsed by John Maxwell, Trey Gowdy, Ben Carson, and Sean Hannity as well with the book. Okay, so they've all seen that book, endorsed it. I think it's going to be a good read. Okay, so I'm excited about it, and it seems super easy. Like, look at this, it's not a lot, so you can get through that quickly. So yeah, super excited to read that book. That's my newbie that I just got in. So wanted to share that with you guys too, since it was just recently posted on Donald Trump's Truth Social, I believe yesterday, endorsing that, and also on Senator Tim Scott's Facebook page was where I saw it, where he endorsed his own book as well. So yeah, okay. So let's get to the first snippet today, which is Tucker Quatarlson. Laura Loomer dropped some receipts, guys, in her recent podcast on Tucker Carlson. And I tuned in to watch it to hear what she had to say now. If you don't know Laura Loomer, I will break it down a little bit for you guys to explain who she is. I know a lot of you probably already know who she is. I am pretty new to the space of politics, so I have to do a lot of research when it comes to these different things. Some names I'm already familiar with, some names I'm not, but that's okay. We live in an age of information, so you can find out. But she has dropped a few different things about Tucker Carlson. She's backed those things up with receipt. I am going to break some of those things down for you guys today, and I encourage you to check out our podcast as well. But so first of all, I want to start with this, so you guys understand where I'm coming from and my point of view on this, just a little bit up front. So my background in social media is beauty and fashion. That's how I got my start. That's where I make my income. And so politics is a little bit new for me. I got into this space like a few months ago. Okay, super new, 2025. Okay. And so in doing that, that doesn't mean that I haven't been watching conservative voices like Charlie Kirk and many others. Okay. But one of the people I subscribed to, I took my learning a little bit further with, was Tucker Carlson. And I believe I subscribed to him not long ago. It was probably like between the ranges of 2 to 3 months ago. I had subscribed to him because I believe this was on his Tucker Carlson network. It was Line in the Sand. And I thought that documentary was recommended for me to watch, and I watched it, and I was so blown away by the one journalist that was doing all these deep dives, putting his life in harm's way to bring us the truth. I was very, very inspired by that, and I loved the documentary and what was told, what was shared. Of course, I did my research too on it and things that were shared. But I thought it was very eye-opening to see where America was in terms of our border crisis, and what was taking place in California with a lot of the nonprofits that we think are doing, the job that they should be doing. So with that, I subscribed to Tucker Carlson, and recently with his rhetoric on Israel not being the Israel in the Bible, and Israel, the 1948 Israel is not the Israel in the Bible, that type of rhetoric, which I think is very misinformed and erroneous. I had to unsubscribe. And that and a couple other things, I just didn't agree with his stance on it, even though he claims to be a Christian. And I get that not all of us agree on certain things, but the basics should be down pat, like one God, things like that. And especially when it comes to Israel, and if you look in Romans 11, for example, I love to put that scripture out because it literally sums up everything that we should believe about Israel. It ties in prophecy, it ties in everything. And you can't talk about Israel and the political stature of things without, as a Christian especially, and Jews, without talking about prophecy, because that is the driving force behind it all. So, or not necessarily at all, but the word of God as well. But prophecy is the testimony of Jesus. It is rooted in our religion, in our relationship with God. It is one of the key things we can't throw away when it comes to talking about this stuff, Israel and etc. So I did unsubscribe from him, only being subscribed to him for like 2 months because I just didn't agree with that. And I didn't, I kind of always try to make sure that the word of God is my main foundation. And of course I'm okay hearing these other commentaries, alongside that. But I'm not fully for Tucker Carlson. I'm not fully for Candace Owens or fully for Charlie Kirk, etc. I'm very grateful for the work that they have done and the things they've plowed. That doesn't mean that they're accurate on everything, but they played a major role in certain aspects of our the Christian conservative movement. So I had to look into this interview with Laura Loomer. Laura Loomer has an extensive background. She's very brilliant. She is a political commentator. She's you can call her, I guess, an investigator too, maybe a private investigator. I'm not sure. But she does a lot of deep dive into some prominent people, and she brings forth evidence of things that they have done in terms. So if they're in any dishonesty, etc., she brings that forth, and the stuff turns out to be true. And a lot of people have been in high prominent positions within our government have been let go because of the stuff that she's brought to light. Okay. And of course she has paid tremendously with that, with being deplatformed and all these different things, but she continues to go forward with it. I think that kind of drives her, was what it seems. Laura Loomer, I hope you don't have any bitterness, but it drives her. And so in this recent podcast, she talks about Tucker Carlson, and she talks about a few different things. Number one of the things that she mentions is that it was already ousted, like maybe a few years ago, that Tucker Carlson's father was in the CIA, that he had a CIA background, and he promoted CIA propaganda. So that was one thing. And she mentions, with everything else that she breaks down, that she would not be surprised. She didn't claim he was, but she said, I would not be surprised if he was also working for the CIA. Now, I've seen some other commentaries on this very same thing as well. I am not saying that I agree with her on that. That's just a claim. It's not necessarily truth, because we don't know. But she has also mentioned, I had to look this up, and I did find that it was true, that there was a Tucker Carlson interview that he had with the Prime Minister of Qatar, and through Luminate Advisors, and she mentioned that he's supposed to be a man of America First policy. He's supposed to be for the conservative movement, supposed to be for America First, etc., supposed to care about the manufacturers. And she just kind of puts out some stuff and backs it up. So one of the things is this his interview with the Prime Minister of Qatar. And she mentions that when she ousted him on having this interview with Qatar, one of our enemies, he kind of had some backlash and said some negative comments towards her, that she's disgusting and all the stuff, because she starts calling him out for this interview. And I'm summarizing, guys. And she says, okay, well, if none of the things I've said about what this meeting was really about and your influence in this region in the Middle East, then why don't you show us receipts of who paid for this interview, who set up this thing, who paid for it? And she says she got crickets, nothing. And it was I've seen some reports that he got paid $180,000, per production for this episode, or this interview, something along those lines. And so he was paid for it. And then another thing that she mentions, which I thought was interesting, was about his nicotine line. She said he's a nicotine lover, so he started a nicotine line called ALP, which I did look this up. It is true. And he partnered with Neil Patel, who's supposed to be this person that's connected to the CIA as well. And in a recent, there's a recent clip circulating from Tucker Carlson himself, saying that he despises the CIA and all these things, and didn't know his dad was in the CIA. Maybe he didn't. But then there's documentation that when he was in high school, college, he applied to be a part of the CIA. So it's just a lot of back and forth. And she mentions again his history, how he was working with CNN, working with Fox News as well, how there are receipts, and I've seen them, of him basically text messages with another coworker, I believe in Fox News, where he was talking about Donald Trump basically in a negative light. It was not supportive of Donald Trump, and it was during the whole Russia collusion or hoax. And it was in regards to the election fraud. So which he later on jumped on, and I guess in the end started to support Donald Trump in those regards. However, in this situation where we have Russiagate, and we now find out it's Russiagate, in that moment it was not Russiagate, right? This was actually a Russian collusion. It was being investigated, etc. And Tucker Carlson was kind of on board. Person, that an informant basically, who gave Tucker Carlson a USB drive. It was a red USB drive that had information of Hunter Biden's laptop. And this information was very, very, it included a bunch of things. It included financial transaction logs tied to shell companies and foreign governments pointing to possible money laundering, tax evasion, and influence peddling, encrypted communications, chat records, and device logs tying Hunter Biden to illicit activities, including drug use, prostitution, possibly human trafficking. Also, there were some ties that this was all his, may have been connected to Biden's laptop as well when he was president. So, and there's much more, which that would warrant national security. So there's a lot of different things. So this USB drive was given to the producer of Tucker Carlson, Alexander McCaskill, is what Laura Loomer said. And she had a actual picture of the USB drive and also next to a business card of Tucker Carlson's producer. It was supposed to be proof that they had met at a hotel and that this was successfully delivered to the producer of Tucker Carlson. Now, Tucker Carlson went on his podcast and said that this USB drive was delivered to him in mail, and that the UPS lost the package. And then when he called the UPS about the package, they said that thumb drive was missing and there was nothing inside the package. The package was found on the floor. An employee put the package on, I believe, the supervisor's desk, and there was nothing in it. Like, it's just whatever was in it is missing. And so Laura Loomer is claiming that was not a true story, that was actually delivered to him. And if it did get lost in any sense, she said that the person that brought him that USB drive contacted Tucker Carlson and said that he had an electronic copy that he could send over, and there was no response from Tucker Carlson. Now, she alleges that Tucker Carlson, at the time, he had a really good friendship with Hunter Biden, and he was trying to cover up for Hunter Biden by not releasing the story, by not releasing any documents in regards to him to protect him. And she alleges that could possibly be a reason why there was even a delay in this investigation, why this Russia hoax thing continued to flourish and went on. And this Hunter Biden laptop story also continued to go on. Sorry. So there's that. And also that she thinks that he's trying to gaslight the MAGA base for ratings and for money, into thinking that he is an America First guy. So there's so many allegations that she made in this. Now, and a lot of, like I mentioned, the things that I've mentioned, the USB drive, the Qatar meeting, the prime minister meeting, that all of that stuff's true. All of that did actually happen. But the question is, why does he keep making these ties with the Middle East? And also, you see some ties with the CIA, but then he claims to be this person that's for America First, and then American First policies and Donald Trump and the MAGA movement. And then you see that he, has that nicotine love. He has that, all of these things, but then he goes and also talks about Israel in a negative light, etc. One of, our allies, and says these different things too. So the theory, I believe Laura Loomer is coming to a conclusion, is that it's possible that he gained this platform, the support or whatever, to be able to gaslight us, to be able to, divide the MAGA base, because maybe he's tied to the CIA, or maybe he's, never ever been for Donald Trump, and just use that as, use it as a way to gain platform and to gain views and money, etc. So these things are interesting. Now, watching her entire podcast, I thought was very interesting, and she brought the receipts, like I mentioned, to this. She tweeted everything that she discussed in that podcast online, so it's available, and you can go and research these different things that I mentioned. The Tucker Quatarlson is her actual phrase that I did not. That's not original. And it was in regard to that meeting with the Prime Minister of Qatar, and then the whole CIA propaganda, with his dad being connected to Voice of America, which was a CIA outlet. It was a way for them to distribute information and propaganda. And then he was originally a registered Democrat. He was working for CNN. Then he flips, right? Which I don't know how I get that aids the argument, but I don't know how necessarily credible that is, because you have a lot of people that flip from being a Democrat to Republican. Like look at RFK, which I call right now Kennedy. Right now Kennedy, moved from Democrat to being a Republican, and many others, right? JD Vance was not a strong supporter of Donald Trump, and now he is vice president and supporter, right? Because he's behind that manufacturing sector. So, I mean, I don't know how that doesn't really pose a strong argument as everything else, but it's interesting to see these different things. And my message to anyone that is watching Tucker Carlson, which I've seen a lot of comments on Charlie Kirk's video of people, including myself, that are saying that they're not necessarily watching Tucker Carlson anymore because of the certain things and that he said, and even though he claims to be a America First person and a MAGA, you know, pusher, as well as Christian. So what I think I would say to us Christian conservatives and to conservatives in general is, did you do your research? Um, None of them are God. None of them have necessarily the final say. We all bring to the table what we can, and there is room for error in everyone's assessment. So I would say, which these are great men, I think great men and women who bring, certain things to the table when it comes to dissecting politics and all that, very skilled in it. But still, you need to do your research, and if you're a Christian, I believe you should be prayerful, and just look things up, and don't take it for just face value because you admire someone, or look up to them, right? So that's that. So it's kind of painting him as gaslighting the MAGA viewers for right now. And there's a lot of people speaking up against Tucker Carlson at this time. I know why I unfollowed him and why I don't subscribe. I have not, I unsubscribed from him, from Tucker Carlson Network. I understand my reasoning and things like that. These are some other things that have just come out that I think he's maybe said some things on some of the allegations from Laura Loomer, but not all of them. So yeah, just do your research, be mindful, be aware, be alert. Discernment matters. Let's not let the aesthetic and the anti-woke slogans blind us from the globalist ties as well. Okay, so we're gonna take I guess we'll go into one break right now to discuss one of our sponsors. This is Augusta Precious Metals. I've shared this a few times on this podcast. Great company. Augusta Precious Metals is a US based company founded in 2012. They specialize exclusively in gold and silver IRAs, helping retirement savers diversify by rolling over traditional IRAs or 401ks into precious metals. The company stands out for one big reason: their ethics and customer service. They've been named Money Magazine's best overall gold IRA company 3 years in a row, from 2022 to 2024. And Investopedia calls them the most transparent pricing company. That's saying a lot in this type of industry we're in. It's also rated A plus with the BBB, AAA with the Business Consumer Alliance, and they've got over 1,000 five-star reviews from customers who are really satisfied. They also offer, I believe this is something really rare in this industry, but it's the highest buyback guarantee. So if you ever want to sell your gold back to them, you can do that with a peace of mind. They also have zero setup, custodian, or storage fees for up to 10 years. Plus, there's a 7-day money back guarantee when you open your account. So that would allow you to have no pressure, just to have time to decide what's actually right for you. And one of my favorite things about this company is that their agents don't receive a commission or anything like that for you signing up. So they have no pressure for you signing up with the company. So their main goal as the agent that is assisting you is to educate you on the move that you are about to make. They actually help you to avoid the common traps and the misinformation some companies use. And you get to choose your own gold and silver products. They don't push anything on you. They basically keep you in charge. So if you're looking for a long-term, honest support, and buyback margin guaranteed company for your retirement savings or investments, Augusta Precious Metals, I believe, really delivers. And you can check them out if you want to get more information about them. If you're on some of my socials, you should see a link for that. But it's going to be AugustaPreciousMetals.com. You should see that, and you guys will have a link for that in the description of my video, of this podcast as well. So yeah, I would highly recommend to check them out if you are considering moving into that. More stability there, with your gold and silver if you turn it into that, and they're very lucrative as well. Okay, so the next thing I want to discuss, guys, this is the Israel versus Hamas. Last week, I brought on Lindsay Loomis. We discussed this a little bit more in detail, where Israel and Hamas was at that time, because as you guys know, the news can change just by day to day, and it has since last week. So now, I just saw a report that Bibi Netanyahu wants to basically fully occupy Gaza, but he doesn't want to assume full control of it. He doesn't necessarily want to run it. He's basically saying, from my understanding, is that Hamas can no longer govern, and I totally agree with that. And they have no other choice but to do this. When you look at the fact that first they gave Gaza up to them, and they use it to get close to Israel border to annihilate them, steal the hostages, bomb their facilities, constantly send bombs their way. It's really disheartening and sad to see this, take place in the Middle East. But I honestly think that they don't have any other choice at this point. Got to get the hostages back. The demands that Hamas are making is horrible. I think it's just bad for a militant group to make the demands that they're making. It's wild, to me, honestly. So they have the hostages, and I've seen some videos or some interviews of, even the past prime minister of Israel basically saying, that, Hamas wants peace. They just want peace. That's not all that they want. They don't just want an end to this war. If you look at the terms that they have placed for this peace deal, they also want, I believe it's like 30 to 60 Palestinian soldiers, murderers, to be released for one hostage. They also want Jerusalem to be their capital. There's so many more things that this militant group, who started and continues this atrocious war, wants. And if I understand Bibi Netanyahu's stance, no, that is unacceptable. That is unacceptable. Why would I release 30 to 60 Palestinian people that I've locked up for crimes, for you to stay at that border there to just attack me and have plans to annihilate my entire nation? I'm sorry, that's unacceptable. And I'm thankful that Trump stands with him, because I don't see anyone else. I don't see a lot of news outlets standing for the hostages, even though we got video footage finally of how the hostages look. And if you look at the videos of the Palestinian children as well, they look very similar. Okay. So we can't, my stance has always been, I'm always going to stand with Israel. I stand with Israel, and I'm not saying they're a perfect nation. We are not a perfect nation, but I stand with Israel on this. And I believe God has a plan for Israel's full redemption. As I mentioned in Romans 11, it talks about that. But when it comes to this war, when it comes to us looking at painting Israel as just the aggressor, as the only one doing the wrong, it is a horrible, erroneous, and incorrect way to look at this war. Anything that we see when it comes to like our president or our government, you have to see this thing at a global scale. You can't just pick apart what you want to see and ignore the whole thing, the whole picture, because then we have issues. Then we can't get to a full conclusion. You can't say that, Israel is just starving the Gazans, or the Palestinians. Sorry, forgive me for the Gazans, the Palestinians. And then we get to see this video, because we didn't see any footage from Hamas, right, releasing anything happening with these hostages. We only heard what was told to us. I don't know how many of us believed it because we didn't have the footage, but now we do. That these hostages, was one hostage, I cannot remember his name, but he was literally digging his grave in the tunnel, saying, I'm never going to probably get out. He's 21 years old, skinny as I don't know what. And so, he's not getting any food. Hamas is also taking advantage of the aid being sent to Gaza, and there's evidence of that they're restricting that aid. There's evidence since 2024. We've have evidence that Hamas controls the narrative in Gaza and what goes out of Gaza. It controls its journalists, so you only get certain information. It controls those casualty data as well. There's reports that that you have that some Palestinians, I don't know why I keep saying Gazans, some Palestinians will go for, try to go to where they can get aid, and then they're shot down by Hamas. So I wonder how many of those casualties were put into Hamas's report that was done by Israel. It's just wild, and it really doesn't make any sense. Israel trying to get its hostages back allows, because again, like I mentioned in my last podcast last week, the pro and con is that they are an American ally. That is a pro and a con, because everything that they do is on a global scale, right? It's before the American public. It's open to our scrutiny. Whereas, and Hamas too, but you know what I mean. It's a different level when you have an actual state actor who is our ally, who has, has to put these things out, has to stand before the camera, has to tell you guys it's happening. And then Hamas, who's completely silent, who never meets with you guys, never shares what's happening unless they want to put out a video, unless they want to do, right? It's different. And I can't see Israel's choice being anything other than to end this war, say no to those negotiations, do their best to get their people out. And I'm praying that those remaining hostages are alive, and that they are able to get out in a safe manner. But it is very hard to negotiate with a group who calls for your complete annihilation, and you're the leader of that nation. I don't see how that. I don't think Donald Trump would even tolerate that. Okay, if that were us, because you even see that Donald Trump, he didn't even waste time bringing people home who were locked up in other foreign nations. You know what I mean? So you're talking about, the hostages from Israel still being in this position that they currently are. It's very wild. So I think Israel has no other choice at this point, and I from what I see, Donald Trump is standing with him to get this done. Now, on the flip side of that, guys, we have countries that are ready to recognize Palestine as a state. I guess they think that this is going to work. I don't know. I don't know if they are thinking, to be honest. You got Spain, Norway, and Ireland trying to recognize Palestine as a state. I mean, it's wild that this is what they think will work. It's not going to work. If it was going to work, we would have saw that happen when Israel released Gaza to them, giving them really close access to their own borders. Okay? Why didn't anything work out then? Why do we have a hostile takeover of Hamas, and then they use their influence from the Palestinians who voted them in position to destroy and annihilate? Because it was always their goal. That is their goal. That's it. You give them a Palestinian state, and then watch what else they ask for. Watch what else they do. Like I said in my last podcast, if Hamas had another opportunity to attack Israel, I promise you they would not hesitate to do that, because they have one aim, one goal in mind. That is from their doctrine. That is from their charter. That is their whole aim. Okay, annihilate Israel. We got to get Jerusalem as our capital, right? Which Israel rightful claim to that. You know, is saying no, and rightly they should. And legitimizing Hamas-led territories, will embolden terrorism. It will. Now, I know we have a major victory with President Trump going in with those B-2 bombers and the submarines. Forgive my brain, guys. I forgot the name of it. I feel like it was right down the tip of my tongue. But basically, they had these bombs in submarines under the water that also did very well in aiming for its target accurately, and then the B-2 bombers as well. And they supposedly have developed a new B-2 bomber plane, and it looks really good. I saw a recent live stream with Donald Trump and a few others discussing it, and they had an actual model of it. It was beautiful. I thought the plane was beautiful. Anyways, the B-2 bombers definitely did some damage to Iran. right? It definitely did. And Donald Trump has said they may start to build up again. They could do that, right? But we're gonna come again. And he makes that clear. He says we're gonna come again if they do. They think that. Um. So yeah. I think that destruction of their nuclear facilities, and then Israel before that, before we went in and took out the nuclear facilities, Israel coming in with the weapons that we provided them to take out the top military leaders, did some damage to Iran. I don't. It did some damage to Iran. Okay, because right now it seems like Iran is in almost like a collapse. So something happened there that we can definitely say legitimately did. And I do believe Donald Trump when it came to his B-2 bombers and all that, the military and everyone saying that. And then also when you have these multiple reports that, might not typically like Trump, also agree that there was, a destruction there that took place of that nuclear facility. It got hit. And these B-2 bombers, well-trained people that, well, had some training, years of training, they said, were well prepared, executed it flawlessly, and ready to do that at another notice. And we're going to get into the Ukraine and Russia war too, in that as well. But you know, um, I also want to mention this when it comes to the Israel and Hamas issue. RFK Jr. This is when he was a Democrat. So he really had no reason to give us a story about Russia, Ukraine, other than to tell the truth, but not in the sense of promoting Donald Trump or aiding him in his rhetoric toward the Russia Ukraine stuff. Okay, so we're gonna get in that, but um, we do have people standing strong with Israel. You just don't see it a whole lot until all the stuff comes out and through. And again, like I said, you do have a lot of unfortunately conservative voices that are basically partnering with Hamas. It is what it is. They're partnering with Hamas because this war is horrible. It's just insane. Partnering with Hamas because this war is horrible. It's just insane. And I'm gonna have to say it for Hamas. So I mean, I'm gonna be praying for them and praying that they can get those hostages out. I'm praying that there is a full occupation of Gaza because this has to stop. It's going to continue if there's not. Okay, and but it doesn't look like he wants to, be a part of ruling Gaza or anything like that. Or it's just he has to get Hamas out of there. Has to. That's just it. They have to go. Okay. The Ukraine and Russia and Trump peace plan. Okay, I want to get into that. We're going to talk about the Ukraine and Russia war. I don't think I can necessarily talk about this without also mentioning NATO and giving you guys a little bit of history. Now, with that being said, anytime we have like these conflicts, these wars, guys, I'm finding for myself personally, like I mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, stepping into politics and learning this stuff and seeing what's happening, making conclusions off of what I see. It's you can't necessarily understand the current conflict without going back to the history, and it's very, very dense because not only do we have what the media puts out, etc., what we learned in school, but you have a whole opposite side from a whole different nation. And so that's why I mentioned before, like I'm learning and I'm saying this out now, is that you see these global conflicts and the global issues when we're talking about government, okay, and see one side of it and be done and think your conclusion is right. You have to see the entire conflict and make an assessment based on that. For example, and I feel like you guys understand what I'm saying, but when we talk about the tariffs, the one thing they focused on was, oh, it's going to hurt consumers and da 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 da. Right? That is one portion. You have to see the entire thing to see if those consumers will actually be affected, as you say. How much money is he bringing in? How much what is working with the tariffs? Because if you're making a building here, you're not even affected by the tariffs. You have to consider all those things before you try to make those claims that seem right. And honestly, not being in the space very long, but looking at certain journalists, it looks like they don't even do the research that's needed to cover the story. It looks like they're just reading from a script. And that's okay if you read from a script, but no, just put the right things out, you know, tell us the full truth so we can know what's happening. Lead us to where we can find the truth. You know, tell us about articles, etc., where we can go to see this information. I know they mentioned a lot of times the CBO scoring and all that stuff like that, but like put the whole picture together. Okay, not do it biasly. Just put it all together so we can see. Okay. Anyways, the Ukraine, Russia, in Trump. Okay, because Trump is trying to be the peacemaker. He's trying to put out all these fires. I think he at this point he already got 6 fires that are out, like Congo and Rwanda is one of them. Kosovo and another nation, it's Serbia. There's so many fires he's put out, and he's done a great job with that. He said he wants to be recognized as the president of peace, and these things are not easy. I will say this because I know some of you guys have probably said this or maybe even thought it. I mean, I thought it, and I do support Trump, but he said before he was elected, this is the first time he quoted this. Um, I will have that Ukraine and Russia war done in one day, 24 hours, right? A claim he made before he was president. Now, he did reach out to the Biden administration to assist in putting out the fire, but both Biden and Zelensky did not open up that opportunity for him. Okay? So even before he was elected president, he was trying to get in to help put out the fire because he had a better relationship with Putin than they did, and I believe that's what he believed. Definitely more than Biden did, and he wasn't invited into the conversation. And I guess you can say, well, Biden's president, he can make that decision. Yeah, he can, but he made a lot of poor decisions while he was president. Anyways, it wasn't ended in 24 hours, even after Donald Trump got elected. But there's so much more that you have to consider when you look into this. And Donald Trump has admitted publicly a few times that he's disappointed that he wasn't able to do it. He's disappointed in the fact that, I'm going to have to say it, Zelensky was right. Putin is a liar. So, when they had that whole blowout in that first meeting with Zelensky coming to the White House and coming not dressed formally like everybody else does out of respect for that nation, all these traditions that he kind of like broke and seamlessly that hardly anybody acts except for one reporter. I think those all things they warrant something. They warrant something, and I think we have to not overlook them. Okay. And I think he wanted to paint a picture of a struggling nation because he was coming to ask for more money, right? So that meeting ended up being very explosive at the end because you had a heated JD Vance and a heated Zelensky, and then the loyal Trump, who's going to call you out and say the truth. And it might not sound politically the rhetoric of a politician, but he just puts it out plain. You should be grateful, right? You should be grateful that we're going to be aiding you. We're going to have this because you'd be wiped out if we didn't have the aid of the United States, and it's true. And thankful Donald Trump has brought in some more aid from the EU and etc. coming in to help out. But this war is very interesting. So I mentioned at the beginning we have to go back to a little bit of the history. I want to bring this in. Right now, Kennedy is what I like to call him. Right now, Kennedy. Yeah, I think we have an asset of him. You can put him up. There was a YouTube video that I saw of him, and this was when he was a Democrat. I mentioned this earlier, where he talked about broke down the Russia-Ukraine war, what took place in Washington, D.C. He gave us some insight into that. And I want to read some of the things that he said. I took a little bit of notes on this guy so I can bring it up to you. So 1992, Gorbachev goes to Tony Blair and George Bush. This is what he says, and says, I'm going to remove 450,000 Russian troops from East Germany, and I will allow you to unify East Germany under NATO, which is, he said, is a hostile army, under one commitment that you never move NATO further to the east. James Baker, he said, is famously quoted saying to him, we will not move NATO 1 inch to the east. Now, that's a different administration. I know that, Russia right now, Russia is underneath like they're communists or whatever. And that's been for years. And so maybe they don't understand administrations on our end, but those types of agreements that are not necessarily written, they're kind of like spoken or whatever. They're not like an official agreement, can be changed per administration. And that's exactly what happened. And Russia didn't like this because they see NATO as a threat to their entire structure of their government, right? Because they're communists, we're capitalists, we believe in free speech and all these things. which is very interesting because when I done my research underneath the USSR, when before the Berlin Wall collapsed, we had that split between East and West Germany. It when you do your history, when you read what took place during that time, East Germany, you see that the citizens there were getting they were impoverished. It was the inability to have free speech, the inability to be innovative to where you can bring in that capitalist money, because you have that innovation in the country. And they looked over and saw that West Germany was moving towards that capitalism, and they were thriving, and they wanted that. They were tired of the poverty. They were tired of all this. And so we have the collapse of that. We have the Berlin Wall coming down in 1989. And it's interesting to me because I'm looking at this like the USSR falls apart, it collapses because, again, the extreme poverty and many other things, but poverty was one of them that led to that collapse. And so you see that this communist society doesn't necessarily last long term. Like it may look good in the beginning, but it doesn't really last long term, right? Because of the lack of innovation. There's a lack of a lot of stuff underneath that. Um, and you have the collapse of the Berlin Wall. People trying to get over to West Germany to have a better life and all that. And I'm saying this because I would think that Russia would look at this and be like, maybe we should try again to have a capitalist society. And I know they've tried in the past, and it was to their detriment. And I believe, without having done so much more of a deep dive, guys, this is my analysis, just reading, reading what I have learned in the last few days, going back into to that history. When they did try to move into a capitalist society, it was very detrimental to their society. And I think that's why they probably don't want to try again. I don't know. Maybe there's more to that. I know there's some distrust in the United States because we didn't keep that agreement of not expanding NATO. Because then you have, the Ukraine with some ties to, wanting to get into NATO as well, and they don't want NATO all the way up to their doorstep. And there's just long history of the two. And so I'm just, when you look at the past, that Russia did try that, and it didn't work well for them. They suffered tremendously, and the people were very, very eager to have Putin because of what he was promising at the time for their nation, because they were such in dire need of a change. And he kept the communist structure going, and does have allies that are buying their oil, buying all this. And but I'm like, you look at that history, maybe you could reconsider. And maybe it was the implementation, the way that it happened, the way when it took place, the whole structure of it. Because these people that are in a communist society for years and then try to switch over to a capitalist to flourish in an already down economy, it might not work that way. It's going to be some turbulence. One thing I learned from Myron Golden, he said that intention, disruption follows intention. And when you intend to do something, you can expect something will come and counter that. You have to push through, etc. Now, again, this is me sharing what my thoughts are, having read and having understood a little bit more about the history and the context. I'm sure there's so much more to understand in this thing. But where do we stand right now with the Ukraine and Russia? Trump has imposed he's imposed tariffs. He's imposed sanctions. I'm sorry, on Russia, on India as well. I think it's 50%, something like that. It's crazy high, and that is forcing Putin to come to the table. It looks like Trump has said to some reporters when they asked about, what does he expect? Does he expect that he's going to get into this war now that there's been sanctions and there's been a tighter push to bring Putin to the table? And he said, now I believe this is great on President Trump's part. It's humbling. He said, I don't know what to expect. Basically, I'm not going to expect anything. But I remember seeing a report from Fox News when they asked him about this as well. He said that he does have a phone call or conversation coming up next week where they're going to meet Putin. Putin and him are going to meet face to face. And he has said that told Putin that he doesn't want to meet face to face if it's not a sure thing that they're going to come to some terms of peace, a peace deal, because the war has to end. I love that Donald Trump mentions, no, it's not our it's not our soldiers, right? And I love that because we are America first and not America only. And I remember hearing Michael Flynn mention that we're America first, not America only. So yeah, while we have these reciprocal tariffs and we're trying to not allow our friends and our enemies to take advantage of us, we're not also trying to make them collapse at the same time. We're not saying that you can't not trade at all with China, right? We're not saying you can't work with these. We need these other nations, okay? But we understand that there's certain things we can't rely on them with. Like, why are we relying on our enemy? You know, China's seen as an enemy. Uh, why are we relying on them for things we need, like medication? You know what I mean? Like antibiotics and insulin and stuff like that. So he's trying to take care of that to where that's produced here. So that way, or, produced at least not by China. So he's trying to get that in the works. But the whole conflict here is very interesting. So this is where we stand with Ukraine and Russia and Trump trying to make a peace deal. Meeting next week, where it seems like these sanctions may be working, which Donald Trump said he doesn't know how much these sanctions will work. That's what he said in the beginning before he put those sanctions on, because the news and all these senators and everyone was pushing for Trump to put the sanctions on Russia. That will bring them to the table. Maybe, but he was like, I might not. It probably won't. I don't even think he cares about that. you know, um, but you see here that Trump is kind of, and he hasn't said it publicly, but he sees it. He agrees with Zelensky that Putin can't be trusted. They've made peace deals or tried to make peace deals in the past. The number one, when I mentioned NATO, was, when Ukraine basically assumed the nuclear weapons. I believe it was from Russia. I believe, guys, don't quote me on that. They assumed that, but they didn't have the nuclear codes, to even activate those nuclear weapons. So Russia made a deal with them that, they would stop the fighting and all that. They'd have peace. They'd let Ukraine kind of be independent, basically, and in exchange for the weapons to come back. So they made that agreement, and then Russia breaks it. So, this has been going on for some time. So also you have to understand the history too to make these conclusions as well. And even when you look at Israel and Hamas, very, very similar thing, right? Not it's similar in terms of you can't trust the deal that's being made. Look how many times Iran has broken their, they have never gotten to an agreement with Iran. Like, they tried, but it's just like that's not their goal. Okay, I know we're trying to make peace, and we have a different way of doing life than they do, and different belief system than they do, but their terms are their terms, and if yours don't align with it, it's not going to broker a peace deal. And yeah, and so this is where we stand with the Russia and the Ukraine Russia war right now. Hopefully we can get to a fighting again. This is another nation that we have to pray for. I remember last Sunday my pastor saying, I want you guys to pray about, these different nations are roaring. And she didn't mention Donald Trump or anything, but she said, I want you to pray about which nation God's putting on your heart for you to intercede for, because the government rests on God's shoulders, on Jesus's shoulder. And we need him. We need him to help with these things. So I am praying that we get an end to these wars and that there can be some establishment of peace in the regions, in Israel, Hamas, and with Russia and Ukraine. Hopefully no other major ones come up at this time. I'm sure there are more, but those are the main ones in the media right now. Okay, we're going to end this segment with some Trump wins, because we've had some major ones in, just this month alone, we have some major wins. I think every month there's a major win on behalf of Trump, which I am very grateful for. This is a man I voted for, who I believe would have brought in a difference in what we've seen. And I don't see him as a deep state, as it's hard for me to check all my comments. I'm going to be honest, because I'm on multiple different platforms. But when I see it, sometimes I'll comment. And someone said that he's deep state. I don't understand how, when the deep state has tried to take them out plenty of times. You saw 2 assassination attempts on this man's life. You see that he came into the picture not an elite. He came in as a businessman who had no backgrounds, mainly in politics, like you would see like from Obama, Biden, etc. You had someone who, used his own funds, who has the ability to call on his own donors, like we see with the ballroom that he wants to make. It's not touching the American pockets. That's coming from Donald Trump's pocket. And then you see in his first term that he agreed to donate his salary because he has to take the salary as president. He agrees to donate it. He took $1 a year, I believe, but donate his salary to charities, different organizations. But anyways, I want to talk about these wins we got from our sitting president, who I am very proud of and I'm praying for. Um, yeah, so Trump led investments or policy proposals is what we're going to talk about. So we got that a new American energy deals, tariffs, or policy ideas he's floated. So we got some past ones first: low inflation, energy independence, rising wages. Uh, Current ones right now, as of like a few days ago, Apple just announced a plan to invest $600 billion total over the next 4 years. Now, first, a few months ago, they said that they were going to invest $500 billion, and they started bringing their companies here, etc., from from China. And in a recent press conference, the CEO of Apple said that even though they had invested 500 billion, he said that there was a challenge from Trump to do more, and they decided to take that challenge, and so he's going to invest another $100 billion. And he explains how he's going to invest that. Excuse me, and this is going to be with chips, with the semiconductors, things like that. And he said that they have, I believe, he's 400 and something thousand employees, something like that, something big like that, and they're in all 50 states. To have a bigger footprint in America, and this move credits Trump's economic environment and pressure to bring jobs home like insanely well. Okay, and especially when you compare that to Bidenomics, which is what Trump calls it. So we're seeing more stability with this with these efforts that Donald Trump has made essentially, and I believe that there's many more. Also, I did a video on this as well, guys. That there is he's bringing back the presidential award, presidential fitness award, back into schools. I didn't even realize that was taken out. It was taken out during the Obama administration, and this basically, I think that these awards like this for elementary kids school, because I remember when I was in elementary school and we had these contests in PE classes. It was like a hula hoop contest, run the mile contest, push up contest, sit up contest. Those things were fun when I was a kid. And I remember the challenge, that I wanted to win. I believe that this sets, kids up. And what the Obama administration did, in short, is they were like, we don't want kids to feel bad for losing, but when you get to the real world, even in government, you won't have nations competing against you. You're going to have that everywhere. And they're not saying, oh, we don't want you to feel sad. No, you have to be on your game. Okay. You have to know what your skills are and then be in that industry to develop it to the best of your abilities. You have to know what your strengths are. You know, as you see with the Trump administration, he has, Scott Bessent is here. We have JD Vance manufacturing. We have certain people are good in their area, and that is where they're positioned. And I believe that when you have that type of challenge, the kids start to learn what they're good at, what they're not. And when they're sad, they'll work. You have to work through that with them. When they don't win, to be a good sportsman, right? I have to teach that to my kid because he likes to win baseball with his daddy. He hates getting tagged out, but reality is you're going to be tagged out sometimes, and you have to learn how to bounce back. That is just life. And so, yeah, I think bringing that presidential fitness award back is amazing. I think the people that he has heading it, I know there's some questions on the people that he has heading it, but they seem very humble and honored to have the ability to head that and they're all fitness people. There's um, there's a wrestler, WWE wrestler in there, Hulk Hogan, I believe it was. There's many athletic people that are heading that have great careers and are a success. But yeah, so I think those are all great wins. Some of the wins that we have, I'm not mentioning all of them, guys. We'd be here for forever if I was going through what has happened in the last 200 days of President Trump's term. Okay, but anyways, we got a lot of great wins. Let's keep praying for this administration. Let's keep praying for these different nations that are raging war. Um, you know, and let's stay informed as well. Now, lastly, I want to mention, guys, before I close out today's podcast, is the midterms will be coming up. So please make sure you go and vote in your local midterms. I think the midterms are those ones are very important. And there's statistics that are out that the local midterms don't have the large turnout. And I get it. They don't have the same media coverage, etc. So you're sometimes not even aware who's running. But do your due diligence. As I mentioned before, this is the age of information. We can find out this information. We can look it up. We can make calls and find out what's happening, right? So we can know who is running and what they're voting, what their stance is, what their political agenda is. I think these things are very important, especially when you talk about major wins like parents being able to take control of their kids' education as we have from the federal level. But remember, and there's certain things with Medicaid at the federal level, but there's also some state regulated things, which is the reason why we have these elections, right? And so we need to know what agenda they're setting forth so we can continue to run with the current agenda of the administration. In my opinion, that's what I want. I want to still have, I want my kids are in a Christian private school with, amazing Christian private school. And if it weren't for that, I'd be homeschooling. But what about my nieces that are in the public school? I don't want them learning about getting their hands on books, sexual books, that they shouldn't have, like talking about how to have sex with a man, with two men having sex. I don't want them learning that stuff, or having access to that without their parents knowing, you know, um, or that even being in school in that type of manner. Okay. So, and I'm sure I know my sisters wouldn't want that for their kids either. Um, but if you're a parent and you want that, then teach that to your kids. But in a public school system where I'm sending my child my taxpayer dollars go to, you're not doing that. Okay. So getting us to where we are right now. We're talking about no men and women's sports. There's a lot of different agencies coming alongside them in that. We're talking about no more, mutilization of children under the age of 19. There are some, he's taking that federal funding away. So there are some hospitals that are coming in line with, they have no choice. They come into line with that. And he has a choice whether he wants to continue to fund them if they don't align with those things, right? As president. And we're talking about, again, I mentioned the parental choice. Um, I mentioned last week the Sharona story about her speaking out for moms. I thought her story was very inspiring, but the silencing of her doing that is very horrible, like under the Biden administration. But again, she can flourish. She's flourishing now, but we have to maintain those things. If we want that, especially me as a Christian, that's what I want. That's why I voted for him. Okay, I didn't see that with the other candidate at all. So yeah, we have to do the work here at the local level, guys. So just please understand that. I highly encourage you to get out there and vote and make sure you are engaged. Okay, you know what's taking place. Take that time out of your work day or whatever to make sure that happens, because like this, we're talking about your children's future, which I know we care about as parents. Make sure that you're aware of what's taking place. Okay. All right. So last thing I'm going to mention, I said that before. I feel like a pastor, like last, but we're going to keep going. Last thing I'm going to mention, check out Tim Scott's book. It's on my Amazon storefront, Aisha Schreiner. You can check that out. The link to Augusta Precious Metals, I would advise you also to take a look in that. You don't have to sign up. You can just get some information about it. They'll send pamphlets to you, etc., just to give you some information about that. If you're interested in it, I encourage you to check it out. And if you'd like to follow me, I encourage you to hit the follow, subscribe button, depending on where you're watching from. I'm at Aisha Speaks Truth on TikTok, Rumble, X, and on Facebook, Aisha Schreiner, and on TikTok, Aisha Schreiner as well. So, I got 2 accounts on TikTok, just so y'all know. But Aisha Speaks Truth is my political account, so you can check those out. Thank you guys so much for being with me. And I will be going live on Saturday, guys, 2 to 3 p.m. ET. I should have made that announcement at the beginning of this podcast too, but I will be going live on Saturdays as well, 2 to 3 p.m. ET. And there's a potential that we might shift my Thursday podcast to Saturdays. Okay, potential of doing that. That's in the works right now. But so this week right here, we're going to give it a test drive. And so I will be seeing you guys on Saturday, 2 to 3 p.m. ET. So make sure you hop in with me. If you hit the subscribe or the follow button, you will automatically be notified, when I'm live, etc. And hit that notification bell too. So thank you guys so much for being with me. Remember, keep America first, keep God first. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. God bless America. Bye.